Hello everybody, and today I'm here to do what I should have done a long time ago. Make a vanilla World of Warcraft dungeon tier list. Why? Well, it just seemed like the right thing to do. I saw someone else make a tier list of this variety, and I was very upset with it. I was mad, I was angered, and it quite honestly offended me on a deep spiritual level. So, I am going to make the definitive, correct vanilla WoW dungeon tier list. And it's going to be great. It might not actually be great, it might be horrendous, but we're going to do it anyway. So, to start off here, we're going to start with the... Let's see, we'll just go from the top and go all the way through. So, Blackfathom Deeps. Blackfathom Deeps, I would say, it's either a C or a D tier. Because I think it has some secrets. It's very variety, excuse me. What I mean to say, it's not linear, and my favorite dungeons are usually not linear, which is why I think vanilla WoW dungeons have the best dungeons, because they're not linear and have multiple ways to go through them, which keeps them fresh. So when you have to go through them multiple times, it's like not the same thing every time, and you can skip through some stuff if you want. You can do everything if you want. That's what I like. So you think because of that philosophy, I would like Blackfathom Deeps quite a bit, but Blackrock Deeps, for some reason, I don't know if it's because of the scenery, it's just very gloomy and kind of uninteresting. There's no real mechanics on any of the bosses, and that's the one main problem with the vanilla dungeons, so... While I do like the layout, that's pretty much the only thing I like about it. So if it wasn't for the fact that the dungeon had secrets, and a hidden bosses, a hidden quest, I believe, which I do like that stuff a lot, but the actual combat and enemies is just, I don't know. I mean, it does have a neat gauntlet at the end. I don't know, maybe it's B tier, but for me, I don't know, it just doesn't get me going. I'm not sure, but that's Blackfathom Deeps. It's okay, you know, but I wouldn't be too thrilled to go through it a second time. I don't know, it just gets boring. It's a little bit too long for what it offers, I suppose. Now, moving on, Shopping Keep, easy S tier. This is an easy S tier. Now, why is it an easy S tier? Shopping Keep is probably the best example of an amazing early game dungeon you'll see in any MMO ever. It's really hard to be as good as Shopping Keep. It's just such a unique and interesting dungeon. You're going through this, what would you even call it? Not really a castle per se, but I mean, it's technically a castle, but it's this Victorian style. That's not Victorian style, it's way too old. I don't know. You can watch a video about it if you don't know, but it's like a little oldie castle in the woods. And you know, there's werewolves, there's haunted ghosts, there's bats. Who doesn't like bats? I know I do. Have you seen those things eat a fruit? It's adorable. But Shopping Keep, it's kind of linear, but it's kind of not, because you're mostly going down a little path, but there's small branches you can go there's a fork in the road and you can go one path or the other, but it doesn't branch out too much, but it manages to stay linear while still feeling varied, very varied. The whole time you're going through this place, more enemies keep popping up. Despite it being an early game dungeon, the bosses actually do have mechanics. It actually feels like you're going to fight a big enemy at the end when you fight this Archmage, I don't remember his name, Arugul. It's just a really good dungeon. I can't put into good words as much as some of the other ones I really like, why I like Shopping Keep so much, but you ask anyone who's played early days of WoW, pretty much everyone's going to say Shopping Keep is one of the best dungeons, and easily the best early game dungeon. I'm just saying, it's pretty good. Sulfur Rock is probably an A tier. It's not an S tier, but again, I'm picky with S tier. S tier is only the absolute best dungeons ever created on this God's green earth, or blue earth. So blue or green, I'm not sure. But Sulfur Rock, what makes Sulfur Rock so good? Well, I'm glad you asked. Sulfur Rock, again, you kind of enter it and you go through this hallway. It's these ruins in the desert, and there's pretty much right when you get to the end of this hall, there's 3 different paths you can take. One leads to a cave, one leads to this graveyard with a bunch of mummy trolls and scarabs, and one leads to the shrine area, the Hydra. Eventually all conglomerates, I don't think that's how that word is used, to this area where you feed these prisoners. They turn out to, you have to help them fight a bunch of trolls, and then they turn against you, and then you're then able to fight the chieftain. I don't know, it just feels like kind of a mini adventure every time you go through, and I think that's kind of the thing, that's kind of what dungeons should strive to be, while still feeling like, you know, it's not holding your hand, like, you know, a lot of, like, modern day dungeons in World of Warcraft do. It's not holding your hand, it's non-linear, there is like a unique event, but it doesn't feel like it, you know, that is the dungeon. The event of, like, fighting off the trolls at the end isn't the dungeon, but it feels like the climax to the final boss, before you actually fight the final boss. The aesthetic of it, that's one thing I should also keep in mind with the dungeons, is that's a big point. Like, the aesthetic of Blackrock and Beast, for example, is really boring. Whereas with Shadow and Keep, it's really good. And then Sulfur Rock, it's like, it's okay, but Sulfur Rock does everything else pretty darn well. And the aesthetic is just like, it's ruins in a desert. It's not very exciting to look at. And most of the enemies do consist of trolls and not much else. But in terms of what a dungeon should be, in my opinion, it does everything pretty well, just not amazing. It's not going to be a super memorable experience. Scarlet Monastery. Some people would probably put this in S tier. I don't know, honestly, I think it might be B tier for me. It's definitely good. It's like a big, you know, cathedral castle sort of, but it's hard to rank Scarlet Monastery because it has 4 different, like, quarters, 4 sections that you could do that are like their individual dungeons. So rating it as a whole is kind of awkward to do because there are some parts of it that are really good and some parts that I think are just okay. Like, there's the armory, the cathedral, the graveyard. Is just those 3 or is there a 4th? I can't actually remember now. But, like, the graveyard is, like, really short and just, like, okay. You know, it's like, you go in this graveyard, and you can clear the whole graveyard or go straight to the boss, which takes, like, a minute. It's an interesting way of doing things. And the armory is mostly just going through, like, a hallway. You wind up in the courtyard, kill a boss, go through this winding hallway, eventually wind up at the end. And then the cathedral is the one most people know because you're going through this giant courtyard, lots of courtyards in the Scarlet Monastery, and you wind up in this big, you know, inside the actual cathedral, which is also huge, and you can go through it through multiple ways. And it's definitely an interesting way of doing a dungeon, primarily the cathedral, because of it. So it's basically just one big open area, and you don't have to clear everything necessarily. And then the final boss, you know, is pretty much the point of the dungeon. And I think with most cases, oh yeah, and the library, that's the one I was forgetting. And the library, most of the quarters of the dungeon, you know, they're pretty linear. There's not a whole lot of variety in how they look at. They mostly just look kind of generic, like inside castles and stuff. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like there's many ways to go about doing Scarlet Monastery. It's like, okay, you do a core, you go through, you can clear some stuff on the side, but it just never felt very exciting to me. And again, it's like, it doesn't feel like much of an adventure. It feels like your standard, you know, go through the dungeon, kill some things, kill a boss. It's the standard. It doesn't do anything great. The aesthetic is kind of nice, but gets old very quickly. It's pretty good. It just doesn't stand out to me. No Murgon. I don't know. No Murgon. It's either C tier or B tier. I'm trying to be super picky with this, unnecessarily so. I think this is gonna go in C tier. And the reason why, fellow nerds, I'm putting this in C tier is because, now for one, I'm Horde, so I don't go through No Murgon as much as other people. Though playing on, you know, vanilla servers, we'll call them, as I've done No Murgon a couple of times. And it's kind of similar to Cathedral, if Cathedral was like every room, if that makes sense, kind of. Because it's basically like a giant open room, a giant open room, a giant open room, with like some hidden like hallways in between. The main problem I have with No Murgon is it feels like, I don't know, there's just so much nothing in there that there's no reason to clear. Like, I like it when there's, you know, dungeons are open and non-linear, but that's when there's open and non-linear, but there's no reason to explore the, you know, the non-essential parts. There's no reason to rush for the final boss, basically, because there's only, like, 3 bosses in the dungeon that I know of, and they're all pretty much on the main path. And you can skip 2 of them. You can skip every boss except for the final boss, I mean, because, you know, it's the point of clearing the dungeon. The main things it has going for it, and the reason I'm hesitant to put a B tier, it has a really unique final boss where there's, you know, there's the mech. He has like a cleave. He has buttons on the side that you have to click to stop the bombs from appearing. Though on the server I played on, he was bugged, and the buttons didn't stop the bombs, so we had to basically kite him out of the room you fought in him, put down a bunch of traps to slow the bombs, and it was honestly really fun how we had to like engineer a way to beat him in the way you're not supposed to. But we did it. It was a wild experience, and that, you know, that was a good memory. But that doesn't make Gnomeregan an amazing dungeon. It looks very, very samey. The entire dungeon looks the same. There's like no variety at all. It's all just like, you know, if you know what gnome aesthetic is, it's all gnome aesthetic. It's all just mechanical surroundings, and there's trogs. No one likes fighting trogs, and everything else is just like a leper gnome. And dark iron dwarfs at the end. It's fairly challenging, which I think is a good thing. And the bosses that are there are, I mean, okay, except for the Bob boss, which is really good. It just doesn't have a whole lot of redeeming qualities, I would say. And again, it is kind of non-linear, which I will say once again is a good thing for me, because it's not a good thing for some other people, usually casual players, which isn't a bad thing if you prefer linear dungeons. I just prefer them to be, you know, more non-linear, so it's just my thing. So Gnomeregan, it's a C tier. It's okay. There's just a lot of nothing to do in it. And oh yeah, it has that one escort quest as well, which is abysmal. No one hates it. No one hates it? Everyone hates it. Fend Downs. Initially, I really liked Fend Downs. I thought it was a solid dungeon. I really liked the undead spooky theme, but I think that was mostly my nostalgia play on me, because I remember when I was way back playing in classic vanilla days, I walked in this place and I was like, oh my god, this place is so cool, it's so spooky, I hadn't seen undead before. But that was mostly just, you know, the feeling of initially walking in and not having experienced that before, you know. I was a silly kid, and now I'm a grown, grizzled veteran of the modern day world, and doing Fend Downs again, like, it's okay. It's mostly linear, to be honest. You're mostly just going to the end to kill the Lich Bro. The bosses aren't anything to write home about. It has Mordresh Fire Eye, which is a skeleton playing an invisible guitar, which is pretty great. It has an escort quest, which is abysmal, like most escort quests. And the enemies do require strategy, you know. There's guys that shoot ice bolts, so you have to stop their ice bolts if possible, but I'm sure if you had a full group on like I did that, you wouldn't really have to think about stuff as much. Most of the mechanics can be ignored because there's very little. I don't know. It's okay. I'm going to put it in C tier. Honestly, thinking about it now, if I were to think like, well, out of all these dungeons, which ones would I want to do the most? Fend Downs want to be very high on there, so I would put C tier. But again, it's a vanilla dungeon. Pretty much all vanilla dungeons are pretty good because, you know, they feel unique. They feel fairly non-linear for the most part. It's okay. It's not D tier quite, but there's very few that are. Low Blackrock Spire, I'll be honest, it's probably the dungeon I've done the least out of everything here, along with Maul. And Stockades I've done literally like once, because I only play Horde. So, Low Blackrock Spire, I'm trying to remember it, honestly. Oh, yeah, no. Oh, I don't remember I actually really like Lower Blackrock Spire, because it embodies pretty much everything I want. I can't believe I forgot about it. It's mostly because I haven't done it much, honestly. I don't know why, but I actually have really pretty high opinion. It's very unique in the way in the terrain. It's a very vertical dungeon in a lot of ways. You know, you enter the dungeon, you can see like this giant like underground landscape right as you enter. There's tons of like secret stuff in there. The bosses are all really unique. The packs of mobs are pretty fun to fight because they have, you know, spells and stuff you have to watch out for. So I do actually think Lower Blackrock Spire is pretty good. I think I would put it, it's either B or A tier. I think I'll do it as B tier. I think I'll knock it down a few points where everything does look the same for the most part. It does have unique rooms, unique bosses, some hidden quests. I don't know, it's very close between A tier and B tier, but I'm trying to be super strict here. And it does have some stuff going on for it, but it does get very samey. And when you do it once, you're not going to want to do it again for 100 years, which might make it sound like it should be C tier, but it's that one time the one time you do it, and it's going to be really good, you know, for me. But the next time you do it, it's going to be like, there's not really enough stuff to do differently. It's like, once you know the secrets, it's like, it's okay. You know, because secrets can help a dungeon up once, but the next time you're gonna do it, like Xiaopin Keep, every time I do it, I'm gonna be like, I'm ready for Xiaopin Keep. Little Blackrock Spire, not so much. We're gonna put in B tier. Stockades, sure I'm biased because I'm Horde only. I'm gonna put in D tier. It's the most boring looking dungeon of all time. It's literally prisons. Every room looks the same. Every enemy is just like a human like thief. The final boss is a hugger, which, you know, he's a meme, but that's about it. Even if I've dungeon more, even if I was Alliance, I'm pretty sure it would maybe be C tier, because I'd be Alliance and I'd have fonder memories of it. But I really do think Stockades is D tier. It is so boring of a look. It's so boring looking that that's honestly the biggest problem with it. It just looks like it's not fun. I don't like it. There's no mechanics anywhere. Sure, it's like the first dungeon you'll do as Alliance, but it's just not exciting. It's dull. It's gray. No reason to explore the other rooms aside from experience. It's so repetitive. I'm not super fond of it. Dire Maul. Honestly, I haven't done Dire Maul enough to properly rate it. It's another dungeon like Scholar Monastery where there's like 4 different quarters, and those 4 different quarters are all really different, and you know, pretty varied in the way you can approach things. I liked all the bosses. They're all pretty unique. I like the hidden stuff you can do in there. It is more of an endgame vanilla dungeon, so there's more secret stuff that I didn't really know about. I think I'll put it in B tier. But again, I don't really know enough about it, but very varied in the way you can approach things. Different bosses, good gear, good aesthetic, really nice aesthetic in some parts, especially like the nature corridor and stuff. The end of one of the corridors has this giant like chaos thing that you have to actually find a way to free by killing these pylon enemies. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Razorpen Crawl might be the only dungeon on this tier list that I'm gonna put in D tier. Again, it's like the Stockades. It's so boring in looking. Everything's just brown. You're just going through this like brown tunnel, killing Quillboar over and over and over. The only like redeeming quality I think it has is this part where you go in this cave and there's like this secret boar boss. But that's like, he doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of neat that he's kind of hidden away. That's about it. There's this like underground area that's completely optional where there's this escort quest. All dungeon escort quests are pretty much the worst thing ever. Nobody likes to watch that goblin slowly walk, aggro 10 slimes and boars, and the slimes don't do anything. They just attack you repeatedly. There's just nothing. I think I like this dungeon less than Stockades, to be honest. I don't know really why. It's just boring. It's just boring. I don't like it. It's pretty linear. The only thing that's that's you can do differently is that escort quest, but nobody wants to do that. If you want to, you know, value your time, I would never. If it was, you know, if I'm looking at all these dungeons, which ones would I want to skip the most? These 2 are definitely number 1. There's no other dungeon, even the ones I haven't done yet, spoiler, that I'm gonna want to do less than these. Those 2 dungeons are probably the only D tier. I don't like them, but I don't know. Looking at some of these, maybe we'll see. Wailing Caverns. Wailing Caverns is a dungeon you either love or hate. That's how it is. You either love it or you hate it. You either love it because it's very non-linear. I'm saying that word way too much, but it's a good descriptive. It's very varied in the way you can approach things. You know, there's 2 like main tunnels you can go through that you'll need to do to eventually be able to access the final boss, because you need to kill these keepers that are in these hidden tunnels. I'm gonna put it in. For me, it's A tier. For most people, it would probably be D tier. D tier or C tier, from what I know of the common opinion. I think this one's a bit specific to me, personally. I don't know why, I just really like Wailing Caverns. Even though the dungeon looks pretty samey, you're in like an underground kind of, you know, you can see from the icon there, like a kind of an oasis underground. Does that make sense? I don't know. Look up some screenshots. It's like underground cave. Think of Razorpen Crawl, but instead of spikes, it's like jungle-ish. That's a fairly decent way to describe it. You know, the bosses aren't anything too special to write home about. The enemies are, they're all right. You know, there's some variety there. There's some night elves that you'll have to kill mostly, but they'll have spells they'll cast and you'll have to interrupt. The bosses will also have stuff of the sort. You know, there's some hidden cavern stuff in the way there. The main problem with it is there's not a huge reason to you know, look around the place. But, you know, I don't know. I think this one's specific to me. I like it. Honestly, I probably should put it in B tier, but I really like it. If I had to be completely honest, I think it probably deserves B tier. But to me, it's A tier, so it's going in A tier. It's a good dungeon, but this is taking way too long, so I'm trying to, you know, speed things up. Maraudon. Again, a dungeon you either love or hate. I think even more so than Way in the Caverns. You either really hate Maraudon, or you like it quite a bit. But I don't think there's very many people who love this dungeon. I think it's either like B tier or D tier for most people. Or maybe C tier. I'm going to put it B tier. I think the main problem with Maraudon, even though I like dungeons that are more lengthy, because they feel more like a, you know, an actual adventure, I think I'm going to put it in B tier. Even though I just said, you know, I like lengthier dungeons, I think Maraudon suffers that it is too long. It's not split into quarters like the other dungeons. It's you go through this giant. I mean, well, actually, there's two. Like, there's like this one tiny quarter, and then there's like the big nature quarter. I think is how it works, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's how it works. And both are pretty fun. One's like demon infested. One's in like nature. But the nature one, I really love the look of the dungeon. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably one of my favorite looking dungeons. There's waterfalls. There's all sorts of variety of enemies. It has one of the final bosses with like the biggest mechanics you'll see for vanilla, that is. There's some hidden stuff. There's a crockless bot that's hidden. There's a hidden goblin boss. It looks really nice. There's some nice mechanics in there. I think it's really good. I think, again, it's maybe a bit too long, but there's no part of it I think is bad, really. So I think it deserves B tier. Unlike all like C tier and below, I think that there are problems with the dungeon. B tier is like, you're pretty good. You don't have any major flaws. Maybe like one minor one or two, but Maraudon, I like you. You look really nice. You have cool bosses, cool enemies. You're good in my books, but you know you're not among the best. Sunken Temple. Sunken Temple. Now, see, I want to give it points because it's the only dungeon like with a legit pure puzzle. It's a dungeon with a puzzle. And back in the day when this is vanilla, you couldn't just look up how to do the puzzle. And I think it was really cool because you have to like go through these different rooms, clear these enemies, and find the proper, like, I don't know, Simon Says, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Simon Says order to press the different statues, and once you like put them all in the right order or whatever, you get a secret boss, which was really cool. I don't think the secret boss itself was very unique. He just kind of pushed you around, but the fact that the dungeon had a puzzle is pretty cool. I'm putting it in C, even though it has that. I think it goes in C tier. You have to basically, the main thing about this dungeon, you have to kill these trolls these trolls in this hallway that are all in different rooms. That eventually allows you to fight the final boss. I think that's how it worked. Then you have to clear these emerald dragons and then fight the Shade of Arenicus, which was the final boss. Main problem with this dungeon, which is the same with a lot of the lower tier dungeons, is everything felt the same. It's an underground temple. That's what it is. I actually think it was personally pretty cool. I had to go through like part of the temple before you access the actual dungeon part of the temple. I thought that was pretty unique, but you know, once you know the problem is that, you know, you could get lost going through the non-dungeon part of the temple, and there's nothing in the non-dungeon part of the temple that was actually worthwhile. But you know, there's some challenge in there. They had mechanics you had to fight through to get to the dungeon part, which I personally think was a neat thing back then, especially because in the vanilla dungeons, in a sense, you're doing them, you know, once or twice for the most part. So that one experience you're doing to do the dungeon is notable. Which, you know, Sunken Temple, its problem is when you have to do it multiple times, then you have to start to get sick of that long walk and stuff. And with some people, long dungeons period get sick of doing multiple times, but for me that's not the case, because, you know, you're doing them once, you get a lot of stuff from that one experience, and then it's, you know, it's fresh, you don't have to do it again usually. But Sunken Temple, everything feels the same. It's trolls, it's serpents that just don't do anything. Its main redeeming quality, again, the fact that it has a puzzle is neat. It has, like, the final boss might be one of the best bosses in vanilla WoW. Vanilla WoW dungeons. He had like a sleep mechanic. He had genuine mechanics you had to pay attention to, which I think was good. He's also a giant dragon, which is like, he's the only giant dragon boss Yeah, I think he's the only giant dragon boss that isn't in a raid, but is actually just in a dungeon, which is cool. But it suffers from the everything feels samey. And yeah, Dead Mines. Most people love Dead Mines. I'll be honest, I think it also goes in C tier. Maybe, actually, no, I can't put it in C tier. It definitely deserves at least B tier. Most people, Dead Mines is some people's favorite dungeon. Some people would say it's like S tier or A tier. I think it deserves B tier. It's mostly because I don't like the look of it for the most part, but at the end it does it. I don't know, maybe it deserves A tier. But I don't know, it's like the first half I don't really care for that much, and the second half I think is really good. Because the first half is like you're going through killing miners, killing Venture Co. people, no, the Device, that's what they're called, just thieves. You find an ogre boss that just kind of swings a club at you, doesn't do anything. There's no really nooks and crannies that you have a reason to explore. It's mostly once you reach this like forge part and you kill, that's when it starts picking up, when you kill like these shredders, and then the pirate ship, of course, one of the best like endings to a dungeon I would say of all time. But even though back then there weren't really many mechanics associated with it, you know, it's a memorable dungeon, just not too great for me. Strathholm. So the main complaints I've had about law dungeons is they look very samey. Stratholm's no exception. It's a burned village filled with zombies. But I think you've got to put Stratholm in A tier. Sure, it's just finding a bunch of undead, and most of it does look the same. But Stratholm is just, for one, it's very lore important. Two, there's these like necropoli. That's the word I'm going to use, that you have to enter. That you have to kill these unique bosses that eventually allow you to open a gate. You have to find this horde of undead that allow you to fight Baron Rivendare himself. There's also the Scotland Monastery area where you have to fight this Dreadlord dude. It's, you know, you can approach it in multiple ways. You can go left, you can go right, in this area. The main thing that holds it down is the fact that it's just zombies. But I don't know, you know, you get breaks from zombies. You get the Scotland Monastery. There's lots of different kinds of undead. It might deserve B tier. But I think I'll put it in. It's also really, you know what, I'm changing my mind. It's going B tier. Again, I'm being super strict with these. It's still really good, but it does get very, very samey for most of it. Kind of like Marden and Dead Mines, where, you know, part of it's, you know, gets very samey, but then part of it's still really good. Like Dead Mines, the second half is still really good. Marden, some parts of it is still really good all the time. But Stratholm, and, you know, same goes with Stratholm. And I also haven't done up to, you know, go in super in-depth, kind of like I did with some of these where how long is this? This is going way too long. I don't want to know how long this video is. No one's going to watch this. Let's just I need to get this over with. I'm just entertaining myself at this point. Okay, Ragefire Chasm. So I'm Horde, so I'm biased. And because I'm biased, I think... honestly, I think it deserves A tier. I think it's, for the first dungeon you're going to do in the game as Horde, I think it's really good. It's for one, the first dungeon in the game isn't a prison. It's lava caverns, which for a first dungeon of the game is pretty cool. It's a pretty short length, which is good for an early dungeon. The enemies and bosses are actually pretty, you know, fairly mechanical. You know, they have mechanics for the most part in the way you have to approach things. There's a hidden quest, a hidden boss. There's two hidden bosses in quests, actually. I don't know about quests, but one belongs to a quest. One's like this demon that's much higher level. The first boss is a demon surrounded by orcs that you have to approach in, you know, careful paths. It might honestly, I don't know. S tier again. It's only the best of the best. It's not S tier, but it's definitely A tier. It's really hard to beat Ragefire Chasm for the earliest game dungeon. It's very good. Uldaman. This might honestly be the hardest one for me to grade in the entire list. Part of me thinks it deserves A tier, part of me thinks it deserves A tier, part of me thinks it deserves B, C. I really don't know where to put Uldaman. It's like many dungeons, you get very sick of the look of it, because it's kind of just underground, like, ruins. I have to think of the other ones, like Sulfur Rock is A tier. I think, but if Uldaman is A tier, then I should also put lower Blackrock Spire maybe is A tier as well, because I like them for some of the same reasons. It has some unique bosses. I think I'm going to put it as B tier. Again, B tier are dungeons I like, but I'm not too thrilled to do them, like, multiple times. It's very lengthy, which is kind of a good thing. It does have lots of unique enemies. But for me personally, I don't know. It never struck me as super fun to go through. I don't know, it does have a unique quest. It has a lot of unique things going. You know, it deserves A tier. It deserves A tier. I may not care for the aesthetic of it, but it has so many other things going for it. It's very non-linear. There's lots of secrets in it. Lots of the bosses are very interesting, very unique stuff. So yeah, it definitely deserves A tier now that I think about it. I think Goldemon's really good. Pretty much the only thing that holds it down on is, for me, is the fact that it's boring to look at. But, you know, Sulfur Rock is boring to look at, and I put that in A tier for a lot of the same reason. Ultimate, honestly, has more unique things than Sulfur Rock, so I think it deserves A tier. And, you know, again, now that I'm looking at some of the B tiers, I'm wondering if maybe I should put some of those in A tier. But being strict here, Blackrock Depths, S tier. Easy. Easy S tier. This is either the best dungeon in the game, maybe the best dungeon ever made of any MMO ever for some people, or you don't like it, like the certain tier list of a certain someone that I watched who was not very fond of it. And I'm like, what the heck, dude? What's wrong with you? Blackrock Depths is like one of the best dungeons ever made. It is that dungeon that if you don't know, if you play it back in the day and you didn't know anything about it, you just, you know, went through, don't look stuff up, just experienced it, it was a true adventure. I don't think any dungeon on this entire list felt as much of an adventure as Blackrock Depths. It is, I'm going to use that N word again, non-linear in the best way possible. There are so many different ways to go through this dungeon. There are so many secrets, so many optional bosses. There's a hidden arena. There's a hidden bar with where you don't even have to fight stuff and can just chill. The aesthetic is great. It's this giant underground, I don't even know what you call it, castle. It has an underground prison, a bar, a forge. The final area is filled with lava. There's a raid entrance in it. It's so big. There are so many ways to go through this dungeon. It has so much in it. And if you don't like the fact that it's lengthy, sure, someone out there is probably gonna be like, let's use the guide, take the most efficient path possible, and, you know, get to the final boss. And, you know, the final boss room, there's no part of this dungeon I don't like. It's like Sulfur Keep in that regard. Sulfur Keep is the best way to do an early game dungeon of all time, I would say. Blackrock Depths is the best late game dungeon you can possibly do. The only thing that, like, bogs it down a little is you're gonna see a lot of red and a lot of black. That's the color scheme of this dungeon, red and black, for the most part. That's basically it. But so much going for it, so many quests associated with it, so many bosses, so many different types of areas, so varied, so open, so non-linear. Blackrock Depths is beautiful. Dungeons, it is in my opinion, it is the way to design a dungeon, like a large scale dungeon. You cannot top Blackrock Depths. It is the best dungeon. I would, if it's closer to S, does that mean it's better? I don't know. I wasn't really like, I guess I could, you know, I'll clean this up because I was just kind of putting them all in the same tier without ordering them. So I guess I'll start with S tier by ordering them. I'm guessing this means it's the best. So Blackrock Depths, you are the best dungeon. Good job, Blackrock Depths. Skull of Mons, in my opinion, also an S tier. Is it? I don't know. It's like Sulfur Keep and Blackrock Depths, I was like, easy S tiers. Skull of Mons, I'm a bit indifferent on, and that makes me think, just because the fact that I'm indifferent on it at all, makes me think it should be A tier. Maybe the top of A tier. It's definitely close, but I'm always really, no, I think it deserves S tier. It's not as good as Blackrock Depths or Sulfur Keep, but I think it's like, it's still barely in S tier, and it's, in terms of looks, I think it is the best looking dungeon in the entire game. It's like a haunted, I don't know, haunted, but, you know, it was a school that was taken over by cultists, and that's now used for terrifying research. And in terms of, like, undead stuff, it is actually very varied. There's all these different corridors and hallways you can go through. All have very unique and interesting areas associated with them. There's this classroom, there's an alchemy lab with a lich, there's this undead bone pile, this bone lord, undead dragons, undead, this succubus lady person, the final boss, teleporting rooms with skeletons. There's all these, like, little mini corridors that have a bunch of mini bosses that do unique stuff. It's just a really, like, again, it's an adventure. It's a really fun dungeon to go through, especially if you don't know what you're expecting. But kind of like with all S tier dungeons, I'm never disappointed to do any of these. And with A tier, it's mostly the same way. B tier is where I'm like, I'm not always gonna be too thirsty about this dungeon. That's one thing I actually noticed. I think I ordered very well. The A tier and S tier dungeons, I'm always like, I am okay with doing this dungeon again. Ultimate probably being like, maybe, but for Ultimate I still think is really good. But Skull of Months, it's really cool. It's the best looking dungeon in the game. The way it's not like super, the layout of it isn't amazing, but again, for what it is on a castle like school place, it makes sense. And it for cultists taking over like a school, it looks about how you would expect it to. Everything looks really good. For an undead place, it is top notch. So there you go. There's my, definitive tier list. If I were to order this a little bit here, oh, that actually seems pretty accurate. C tier. B tier is the one that had the hard ties, or I think low Blackrock Spire. I cannot. Okay, low Blackrock Spire I think would be the peak. Let's see, Dire Maul, Monastery. I think Marden I'd put ahead of Dire Maul. Den Mines and Stratholm. Again, the order of that in the actual tiers doesn't matter too much, but I'm going to do it a bit. Rage of Archasm, Wayne. I think that's actually accurate. Yeah, I think this looked pretty fine. So, yeah, there we go. There's my, I spent way too much time on this. Hey, Void, what's the things you're passionate about in life? You're not doing a whole lot right now. Just kind of, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, oh, I don't know. What are you passionate about? It's like, well, Vanilla WoW Dungeons, let me tell you, I am the master of them, and my tier list is the only one that matters. All you other jokesters who think you know how to organize tier list, you are the worst. I hate you, you upset me, and I'm just kidding. You don't actually hate me or upset. Well, I don't hate you, but you do upset. Your tier list do upset me. All like 2 of them I've seen. Anyways, I made a Vanilla WoW tier list. I'm not sure why. I spend too much time on this, so there you go. Vanilla WoW Dungeons. Have a good day.